So for every hour you set in your hot tub, you lose a quart of body fluids. It's almost like dieting. But a lot of that is water coming out of your body and also oils and greases. So this is kind of a band-aid chemical. Use it as needed. Or better yet, read the directions and use it as they say. So it works real well. This is good. This is a good product.
What exactly is again this
It's a natural
particular?
enzyme that eats oils and greases.
Okay. And how much is? And I was supposed to put this one.
1 to 2 ounces per. If you find a lot of oils floating in here, you're usually going to use 1 to 2 ounces, or better yet, follow the directions. So it works real good. Okay, so the last two is you've got chlorine, which is your disinfectant. There's 3 types of chlorine. There's free chlorine, total chlorine, and combined chlorine. What you need to do is determine how much chlorine will maintain between 1.5 and 3 parts per million of free chlorine when you're using the spa. So you need disinfectant in the spa before use. Okay? So for this spa, usually it's about a teaspoon, which isn't very much. So again, when you fill the spa full of water, we're going to send you what you need to add. On a regular basis, you'll probably be using a teaspoon of free chlorine before each use. What happens with free
Before each use, so you
before
keep
each-
adding it each
yeah.
time.
Right,
And,
before each use.
How make we sure that it's
The pumps will dissolve and move it all. Will
okay?
mix
So
all
does
the
does
chemicals
the
around.
chlorine evaporate then with time?
Yes, exactly. So what happens is when you let's say you take your teaspoon of chlorine out of your container and you throw it in your spa. We call it free chlorine. It's free to go hunting for germs and bacteria, oils, greases, contaminants that are in the water. At 98 degrees, chlorine dissolves and then it gases off and it's gone. So if you put a teaspoon in there this morning and the spa's hot, and you come back this evening and take a reading, it'll probably be 0. Okay? So the test strips will tell you for sure, or a test kit would be better. So once you put the free chlorine in, if there's no contaminants in there, again, it's looking for contaminants, but if there's no contaminants in there, it dissolves and it gases off. There's no eye burning sensation, there's no tear gas smell. Okay? So let's say the next day you test the water and the chlorine's at 0 parts per million of free chlorine. You add your teaspoon again. And this time you get in the spa. Well, everybody's got perspiration, they got oils, they got stuff on their body. So this little free chlorine goes hunting for these germs. When it finds a germ, it jumps on it and starts killing it or oxidizing it, and now it becomes a total chlorine. And at 98 degrees, it dissolves and it gases off. There's no eye burning sensation, there's no tear gas smell. Okay? So the next day, let's say you take your chlorine reading again, and it's at 0 parts per million of free chlorine. So you throw in your teaspoon again, and 13 of your friends come over. That'd be fun. And they get in your spa. Now what happens is this little free chlorine molecule goes hunting for these germs, and it gets ganged up on by all these extra contaminants. It can't do its job properly. Now it becomes what's called a combined chlorine. That's when you get the tear gas and the eye burning sensation. That most people think the problem is there's too much chlorine. That's not the problem. The problem is there's not enough free chlorine to combat all those extra contaminants. And that's the point where you have to shock the water, which is adding 10 times the amount of chlorine that you usually use. It's called breakpoint chlorination. Or we use Activate, which is a non-chlorine shock. And usually for this spa, we would use 2 ounces of this. So you should never, ever be in a pool or a spa that has eye burning sensation. If you do, it's puked out, it's dirty, and it needs to be shocked. Okay? And most people think that's the norm, is when you get that eye burning sensation, your hair turns green. They think that's the norm. That's not the norm. That's wrong. Should never be like that. But instead of using chlorine for shocking, we use activate. We call it renew. It's basically called non-chlorine shock, or potassium peroxymonopersulfate. See if you can repeat that one. So this is what we use for shocking. Okay. So if you come out and you smell that eye burning sensation, or the water looks cloudy, you may need to shock it. Okay? And that's what this is for. So anything and everything that you can read will help you as far as water chemistry goes. Okay? So that's basically water chemistry 101 in a nutshell. There's one chemical that you don't have. It's called calcium hardness increaser. Like I say, we're going to take your water sample back to the shop and test it and find out if you need calcium hardness increaser. Most of the water in Washington, or a lot of the water, Redmond, Kirkland, their calcium hardness is at 0 parts per million to 30 parts per million, which is really low. And it needs to be somewhere between 100 and 400 parts per million, the calcium hardness does. So we'll test it and find out if you need a bottle of calcium hardness. But in their kit, they don't include it. And I keep telling them that they do need to include it in Washington State because our water is different than most all of the other states. So, if that makes sense. That's a lot of information to take in, so that's good that you're videoing. But again, the manual spells out a lot.
A question, of
Yes.
course, before we go into, we would have a shower. Would it be maybe also recommend to have, after we were in the spa, to shower with all the chemicals?
No, because most everything in here is, this water basically, did you guys get an ozonator?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have an ozonator is a natural disinfectant, and it's pH neutral, so it doesn't affect the water chemistry. And since you have an ozonator, you're going to basically be using 95% less chemicals. Once you get everything balanced, then you're not having to add as much chlorine or shock because of the ozonator. So that's good that you got that. So no, most of the time you don't have to shower after you get out. I never shower because I have an ozonator on my spa, and I mainly on my spa use my ozonator, but I always keep my water balanced. So an ozonator kind of smells like that freshness after a lightning storm, or like after you make a copy in a copy machine. It's kind of that smell.
So does it turn on automatically?
Yes, it's programmed.
And where is the ozonator here?
The ozonator is under the cabinet.
Ah.
So you have a whole bunch. You have jets. You have pumps everywhere. There's a pump over here. There's a pump over there, and then the ozonator is under the cabinet. This is your equipment pack. This is where your electrical is going to come from your electrician. There's a neutral, hot, hot, and then the ground's located right there. This is what we call a plug and play pack. So you've got your main pump right here. You've got your ozonator plugged in right here. You've got your pump 2 plugged in here. You've got your blower plugged in here, and you've got pump 3 plugged in here. So you've got a lot of pumps. So basically, this is a Balboa equipment pack. This is the #1 manufacturer in the world of equipment packs. They're the best of the best. You don't get any better. This is a plug and play pack. So if you had a pump go bad, I could come out, unplug the plug from the printed circuit board. I could remove this little tab right here, pull the cord, and I could go over there and pull the pump. And the reason why I could pull the pump is because each pump has shutoff valves like this. This basically is what we call a slice valve or a shutoff valve. When it's up, it's open. When it's down, it's closed. When it's closed, it shuts the water supply off from the spa to the equipment. And then, and of course, we have the power always turned off before we shut these. Then we can, if we needed to replace your heater right here, we could shut these valves, one here and one over at that pump. We could undo these unions, this one and this one, and each union has a gasket. We could disconnect the heater, pull the heater out, put in a new heater, tighten up these unions, open up these shut-off valves, and have a new heater in here in less than 30 minutes and have you back on the road operating. Same with the pump. Pumps are the same way. They all have unions also. So it's pretty deluxe. It's very deluxe. So is your electrician coming out later today? So he could probably bring, depending on how he does it, unless he's going under the, is he going under the deck or is he coming across the deck?
I think under would be better, right?
Probably if he can get under the deck,
Yeah.
because he could come under the deck and he could either come up through the deck